So I just want to welcome everyone and let you know that closed captioning is available this morning. My name is Adam Pearl. I'm president and CEO of ArtPride New Jersey. I am a white cisgender male in his early 40s with brown hair, short brown hair and brown eyes. I'm wearing a blue shirt today, and behind me is a beige wall with a photo of a desert flower taken by a good friend of mine. I want to start this morning with a land acknowledgement to note that we are on the unceded land of the Lenape tribe in New Jersey. And as a statewide organization, it's important to note that New Jersey holds unceded land of the Nanticoke Lenape tribal nation, as well as the Ramapo Lenape tribal nation. And this slide that Anne-Marie is sharing with you right now holds a little bit more, some links more about each tribal nation. And of course, these slides are going to be available, and we'll try and get those links into the chat as well. This piece of art is actually from the New Jersey State Museum, which holds many Lenape artifacts, of which obviously this is just one. And we can all learn more as our museums open, certainly statewide, the State Museum in Trenton, as well as in particular the Montclair Art Museum, together hold a collection of more than 4,000 pieces of American Indigenous art. So I encourage you to continue your education. Also this morning, wanted to let you know that we will be taking questions for our amazing panel this morning. I think you're going to be really intrigued by the conversation. And for, of course, myself and Anne-Marie, feel free to use that question and answer feature at the bottom of the box. And keep your eye on, as I noted, the chat feature. We'll drop links in there from time to time. But this is recorded. This is being recorded. And we'll get this up on the website probably later today. So if you want to come back to it for information, or if someone wasn't able to make it this morning, you want to share, certainly available. That's it for the introduction and welcome. So that leaves me to pass it over to the amazing Anne-Marie Miller, our Director of Advocacy and Public Policy.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, that's my name, Anne-Marie Miller. I am a white cisgender female. I use her, hers pronouns. I'm wearing a black t-shirt, and I have sort of grayish blonde hair, glasses, and behind me is a glittery wall hanging in a window. What we're gonna do is run through what's new. And state budget negotiations are ongoing until June 30th, when we need a final budget. Please remind your district legislators about the need for state arts funding. We have an action alert at artpridenj.org/actnow. So there's 1 month left to have your voice heard. As you may know, the budget proposed by Governor Murphy includes a 60% increase in funds for arts, history, and tourism through our state arts agencies. And we really need that state funding as our sector recovers. So it's important to let the legislators know how important that funding is to you. Government funding has really played a huge role in making sure that many of our organizations are still alive and trying to get through all of the past year. What's coming up also is the State Arts Council hopes to have by the end of this month, which is, I guess, like next week, there will be $7.5 million in coronavirus relief funds available for losses of arts organizations through December 2021. So that's through the end of this year. Eligible applicants are art missioned organizations, nonprofit organizations that have 2 years of public programs, a governing board of directors, at least one part-time staff person. Multi-county impact and budget size are not requirements. You will need to be registered in SAGE and with New Jersey Charities registration through the New Jersey Division of Consumer Affairs. The State Arts Council guidelines will be coming out, as I mentioned, and they will also be offering technical assistance on SAGE and charities registration as well. The coronavirus funds are if you've received prior CARES funding that will have to be deducted through, for the amount that you might receive this time around. There's a very careful eye on making sure that there's no duplication of coronavirus relief funds. So something to look forward to. This time, is kind of a new for the State Arts Council. Bless them going through this process. This is not restricted to prior Arts Council grantees. This is open, again, for arts mission, nonprofit arts organizations. American Rescue Plan. I know there's a lot of words on this slide, and that's why we'll make it available later on for folks. The funding is going to state and local governments. We're learning that the state of New Jersey is getting $6.24 billion of funding. They have not yet really a concrete plan on how that money is going to be spent, but there are certain guidelines around it. And this is to encourage recovery. And what I'm trying to stress in all these words are the fact that the arts sector is an impacted, disproportionately impacted industry. And that is how we're making the case for this support. Also, there's a stress on disproportionately and negatively impacted industries, including tourism, travel, and hospitality. And there's a direct link, of course, between arts and tourism. So that helps us make the case as well. What we're trying to do is make the case for millions and millions of dollars for the arts sector over the period of time that spending is allowed for American Rescue Plan funds, which is through December 2024. And we're making that case not only to the governor and the administration, but also to the legislature, because the legislature right now in New Jersey is trying to make a case for the fact that they want to have a voice in how this funding is being spent. So we're working with legislators to try to come up with some language for an actual legislation that arts advocates can support for millions of dollars over that 4-year period of time. Just want to draw your attention to the fact that there is a webinar coming up on next week with Americans for the Arts and some guidance on how to tap the American Rescue Plan state and local block grants. So draw your attention to that. President Biden's budget's coming out next week as well, May 27th. NEA grants were announced on May 12th. Total of $1.5 million in direct grants, including $976,000 to the State Arts Council as part of their state partnership grant. And you know that a lot of that, most of that funding is re-granted to local arts organizations through the State Arts Council, which will also receive $875,600 from the NEA and American Rescue Plan funds. So they will have to be granting that as well. The federal budget process will continue through the summer, but in the meantime, the NEA will also be releasing guidelines for their $135 million in American Rescue Plan funds. Putting that in context, their current budget is $167 million. On top of all that, the first round of shuttered venue operator grants through the Small Business Administration is due to be awarded by the end of this month. So there's a lot happening right now. Just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that the National Independent Venue Association and the Event Safety Alliance has a checklist for the live entertainment industry in terms of safe reopening. And there's a link at the bottom at eventsafetyalliance.org where you can download the checklist for free. Governor's Awards in Arts Education are coming up on Saturday. They are online and we invite you to tune in. It's always a great celebration of the work of arts educators, students, and teachers. And they've done an amazing job on the video production. Backspace. ArtPride New Jersey is awarding, as one of the partners of the Governor's Awards in Arts Education, the Distinguished Arts Advocate Award to Leon Rainbow. Many of you who know Leon's work in mural work. He also does a lot of work with children, teens, has done a lot of work on trying to promote values and all good things. We're really happy to be able to present this award to Leon, and we also want to make sure that kids understand that this is a career, that they can live up to this, being an artist of this stature. Thrive conference, which was postponed from last year, registration is open. Early bird registration, $25 through Monday. The link is there for you to register. We're really looking forward to this. We have some incredible keynote speakers, Carlton Turner and Tulane Montgomery, and a lot of really good sessions planned for you. The link to the Excel event page is there where you can see the agenda and sponsors, and we're updating it daily. All right, let's see, now we're gonna get back. We're gonna start off, I'm gonna get Linda here. I wanna introduce Linda Harrison, who is the director and Chief Executive Officer of the Newark Museum of Art. And I am so delighted that she's decided to spend her time this morning with us, along with our artists, Danielle Scott and Erik James Montgomery, to talk about how it's funny, I use the term arts and advocacy collide. And I know it's more arts and activism intersect, but I think the work of these individuals really brings attention to the art of our times right now. And so thank you, Linda, so much for joining us today. And let's bring on our artists.
Well, thank you, and I wanted to thank you and ArtPride for inviting me to moderate today's panel. And we are thrilled to be reopening the museum in just a few weeks, and to mark that occasion with the New Jersey Art Annual Exhibition that's on view beginning June 17th through August 22nd. And ongoing since the 60s, actually, 1967, this celebration of New Jersey's vibrant artist community. And this is one of the times that we have, we've hosted over 10 times. To date, we are proud to have presented the show more than 10 times, and most recently in 2014. So today, we are actually talking with two exceptional artists, two of the 45 that have been included in this New Jersey Arts Annual that we will be debuting in a couple of weeks, called Revision and Respond. That's the theme of this year's presentation. And both Danielle Scott and Erik James Montgomery are deeply engaged in social justice issues of our time, as you said, Anne, and we'll be hearing from them and how they create output. Their creative output in art is firmly rooted in activism. Let me just take a moment to introduce Danielle Scott, who is a mixed media artist who grew up in New Jersey City, in Jersey City, New Jersey. Her work expresses politically and socially charged messaging. She considers herself a soft-spoken artist. Danielle has begun to use her art as a conduit to explore boldly fearless, thought-provoking work, which draws its inspiration largely from her own journey and life experience. Her latest pieces, we like to say, are brazen offerings, conveying the intense beauty and the pain, the wretched pain the artist absorbs from the world around her. She creates using photo montage, found objects, raw materials, old books, and collage. From vivid paintings to piercing photography to striking sculptures, This is all Danielle. And then just a bit about artists, our second speaker, Erik James Montgomery, who is a fine art photographer and educator and founder of EJM Foundation. This is a nonprofit organization located in Camden that is committed to offering photography instruction to at-risk youth. Additionally, EJM Foundation creates public works of art, photographic art, in order to beautify the communities and inspire the residents served. An East Orange native, Erik started using his art to speak out on the atrocities of apartheid in South Africa in the late 1980s. Later, he directed that energy into activism via his conceptual photography, which I think you are seeing one of his images right now. So my first question is to you, Danielle. You noted in your artist statement that your art, through your art, you aim to arrest the viewer, to transport them away from the pretentious and into a realm rooted in truth. Can you expand on this for us?
For a very long time, I played it safe with my artwork. I started off as a trained oil painter. I am a graduate of Arts High School in Newark. And I was trained by Alida Caldwell, the late Alida Caldwell, and I was mentored for almost 20-something years by Gladys Barker-Grauer. And in that, I learned a lot with my oil painting, and I went into SVA as a fine arts major. But I was playing it safe, and I did these paintings, and they were beautiful, and people loved them, and they can tell, like, you know, my background from my paintings. 3 years ago, I actually took a trip home to Cuba. So I'm Afro-Cuban, and I took my trip to Cuba with Ben Jones, who's my mentor with BISA Washington. And I went back home for the Havana Biennale, and Ben said, you need to go home. I need you to go home now, because there's things that's happening with your work, and I want you to go to the Biennale. The Biennale changed my life. And Ben, of course, has changed my life since I was 14 years old. And I learned that I need to stop playing it safe and push boundaries and have no boundaries when creating. I went into my first residency at Matter Contemporary at SCAF. And that's when I started to explore different mediums, found objects. I love all mediums, photography, found objects, sculpture. I sculpt, I weld, I do this. And now I'm finally finding myself, and going home to Cuba made me see that, you know what, you need to just step out of that comfort zone of just picking up a paintbrush and oil paints and explore who you are. And that's what the Biennale did. And now my work has exploded to, you know, a lot of social justice work, politically drawn work, women's rights. Everything is coming out of my work. And I'm also a mother. So with seeing what's going on in the world, you know, I have a 19-year-old son and a 19-year-old daughter. My son's gonna be 20. So I fear for them. And I've been fearing for them for the last 5-6 years that all this stuff has been going on. And it's like, you know, that concept has been pushed into my work more and more. So my subject matters are tending to be my children and my family, which is kind of hard to do. So I need to speak my truth. And I actually saw that Erik uses this quote as well. When I start my day in my studio, I listen to Nina Simone. Nina has to play in the background. And that comes from Gladys Barker-Grauer. When I used to walk into her studio as a 15-year-old, that's what she was playing. And she always had James Baldwin. And so now my routine is even if I read a passage in James Baldwin's book, I'll read another one before starting, just to get that fire inside of me so that I can just start creating. So I want to tell the truth now. I want to tell the times. I know it's my duty. I know it's my purpose, and I cannot sit back and say nothing, especially as one, a woman of color, one who has children of color. Yes, they're biracial children, but they're still, all people see is color. As one who walks about the world feeling like I have a target because I have a lot of strikes against me. You know, one, I'm a female. Two, I'm a woman of color. Three, my religion is Jewish. And four, I'm a lesbian. So it's like everyone sees me in this realm as, you know, I just don't fit in, but I'm going to explore those in my work. And I want to make sure that everyone knows my story, my truth, and our truth as people of color.
You know, Danielle, you have hit on a subject that, although I do not have kids, I have friends who do, who, when their kid was 3 or 4 years old, it was like, oh, everything is cute. And then as, and I'm remembering in particular, one of my friends, her son, they had this conversation with him about a hoodie, just something that he just from fashion standpoint wanted to wear. And his father just start shaking that you just cannot wear this hoodie to school, as he became now a teenager. This fear is so real, and you're taking on being fearless. Is something that I believe really allows people to understand deeply what the stories, what our news stories are. This is something that we are discussing at the museum almost nonstop in terms of presentation, that we cannot fear telling the new stories. And those stories may be painful, but these are the stories of the various diasporas. You mentioned that you're Afro-Cuban, you're Jewish, and this is where the art now is coming from, all of those perspectives. And I just really appreciate getting that insight, and for our audience to hear, it's going to look very different. And this art will look different as you see it in galleries, in museums. I want to, Erik, bring you into this conversation. And I saw that and noted in your artist statement that photography is a powerful form of communication for you. It transcends all barriers of language. And how do you see your art speaking to anyone in the world? Because you specifically said anyone.
Sure. So first and foremost, I want to thank ArtPride for allowing this to even happen, and thank you to Danielle. And so photography is a very powerful art form. We speak more visually than we do audibly. We see so many images come across our eyes over the course of the day, where there's subtle messages, there's overt messages, and through photography, and as a fine art photographer, I chose to use that medium to share the stories and thoughts that I have. Somebody once said that a picture can speak 1,000 words. I think a good picture can speak 10,000. And I try to aim for those good pictures because I want to really communicate what's going on within myself in relation to how I see the world.
Linda, you're muted.
Thank you, mute.
Thank you, Anne. And when you are looking at, when people are, have you observed folks looking at your art? And if you have, what were those, what did you observe, really?
I'm laughing because as an educator, I teach whether it's my younger students or the college students, to try to get unbiased opinions about your art. And I share with them that when I do exhibit my work, I try to just hang out in the background so I can hear people converse about my artwork, so I can get those honest answers and those honest feedbacks, just to hear that dialogue. So in a hood, we call that ear hustling. So I would just eavesdrop and hear what's going on. And then eventually, you know, I would introduce myself. But if they don't know me, I'll just kind of linger around just to see what's going on. With social media, a lot of times you'll get the niceties and things of that nature, but I think it's in-person exhibits when you're going to really hear honest feedback from people talking with each other, which I would love to hear. I would love to see more viewers of art give that honest feedback, whether it's strictly artists. DM Danielle and say, hey, what do you mean by this piece? Why do you use your nephew in your art? Because a lot of times art can be very subjective, but I love hearing from the artist, him or herself, to find out where they were coming from in creating the artwork. So yes, I definitely eavesdrop, and I love to hear what people are saying about my artwork. And it's interesting because a lot of times people will bring their own personal experiences into the artwork, which I love. And then sometimes I could hear them bring a different angle or a different perspective that I wasn't even seeing it as. So that's the beautiful thing about art, because it brings people together. And then from there, we can share opinions and thoughts and beliefs and things of that nature.
Well, it's great to hear you say that, because as we are looking at showing art, we're trying to not just be that museum that you look at something on the wall and it's a hushed environment. We want the interactive piece, and we're working on. I'm glad to hear that as the artist, you like to eavesdrop, and that as the museum, we want to have people be more immersive, more interactive, and we're looking at how do we record that how would we approach that as you walk into one of the galleries and you're looking, because this is where the conversation starts. This is what sparks maybe sometimes difficult conversations, but this is what we're saying the museums must be about today, is to be that safe place to have these different conversations and difficult conversations, because we're having, a lot of us are having these conversations at home. Danielle, so I had a second question for you. While the COVID area has been a trying time for all of us, I believe that the museum has been reshaped and renewed by these challenges it's faced over the past 15 months. And your work is very powerful, and talking to you, it's even more. How much of your work is for you versus the public, or is there a distinction?
I think it's for the both. It's something that fills me, and I get great pride in putting this work out. Like the image that's up right now is of my nephew. And this series is actually inspired by two people you might think is kind of weird. My favorite rapper is DMX, and my favorite song is They Don't Know Who We Be, because of the lyrics and the words. And then Dr. Martin Luther King's speech, which when Dr. Martin Luther King said, my prayer is for my 4 children of color to be seen more as the content of their character and not their skin tone. And the image of Dr. Martin Luther King holding the mugshot sign has always been in my head. So what I've done is actually, I have photographed 30 males in my family down to a 7-month-old with a sign. And I'm using it in my work to bring awareness to the fact that this is my nephew. He's a student, he's an athlete, he is a human, he is beautiful. And I want people to see that this is who they are outside of their skin tone. And this just comes from my son. My son goes to Syracuse, and he's been very fearful of his surroundings. He's 6'1", he's in school for aerospace engineering, you know, and people just look at him like, whoa, you know. He speaks 3 different languages and plays instruments. And I just wanted to bring awareness. And normally I use my bullet shells and my flags and my targets in a different way. So this series, I wanted the targets, the bullet shells, the gunshot shells to kind of adorn my children, my nephews, and my cousins. So this is I try to make them very cathedral, or a cathedral, if you want to say. I was raised Catholic Jewish, and my best experiences. Sorry about that. My best experience is always walking into church and looking at the stained glass windows. But something always hits me, and I'm like, how come there's no one of color in the stained glass windows? So this series in particular, I'm starting to use a lot of resin to make this a permanent piece, as if they were embedded in a stained glass. So as you said, my work is for me. It helps me to become more comfortable with sending my children and my family out into the world and sharing my story, because I want people to say, wow, I never thought about this. And I remember someone coming in my studio, and the woman said, you know what? I said to my husband, we will never have to have these conversations with our children, like this artist who has to have these hard conversations, uncomfortable conversations with her son. And I have a 4-year-old as well. So I have photographed my 4-year-old in this same setting, but used him in a different way. He doesn't have bullet shells. This particular piece is inspired by my son and my daughter, but it's called Auction Souls. And it's the slave line when we are weighed and we are measured up to see if we are fitting to work somewhere. So one is filled with bullet shells, one has nails. It's all the pain that we've experienced. There's old vintage rulers on there. There's some little tiny guns on there as well. Those came from my mentor studio, from Bisa Studio. And I try to put my mentors also in my work, because they've influenced me. You know, the way Bisa creates, the way Miss Grauer used to create. Miss Grauer was all about social justice. I mean, she ran for the Senate. Like it's all of those things. They fueled me. And I feel like I want to give that same thing, and especially to Newark, who has given me everything that I need since I was 13 as a young art student. You know, this particular, okay.
You spoke in your piece about showing your nephew or those in your family members in this portraiture way. This is a key area where we just don't see ourselves.
No.
We don't see ourselves, whether it's in our cathedrals, in our Presbyterian church, in our synagogue, the everyday. And this is part of where I believe that the museums and galleries have a responsibility to show these types of portraits. These are portraits, and if you're only familiar with seeing a non-person of color, a white person, whether it's in a painting, in a sculpture, that you get a sense of history that is really kind of warped. And so we actually have to correct that canon. And this piece where you say student, like this kid is a student. It's like not in your consciousness that this would be a student and he's studying at Syracuse, and then that fear that even he has, that he has to be aware of nonstop, that adaptation. I'm older than both of you in a lot of numbers, and as a Black gay woman married to this woman for 27 years, the adaptation that I have had to do just as a Black person. And then I layer that I'm Black, I'm gay. My world is expansive, and we have these various different identities, but that if we don't see it, and I think art is a way for people to see, and sometimes they can see it, absorb it before even having to talk about it. And they may be the type that, okay, they'll go home and like, did I just see that? Or they can begin those conversations, but they have to see it. We have to like face this, and with the thousands of art objects that myself and my colleagues have, this is the work that we have to do, looking at art and the art that we display and the artists that we have and that we talk about through this racial and gender framework. I'm quite moved by this particular piece, and I know that you really can get to telling a story the deeper you go into like it being that personal, because now you're taking your family
and it's hard
and doing this.
It's not I get so emotional sometimes creating it that I step away and I work on something else because I can't take it. It's just sometimes like, wow, like I'm looking at my 4-year-old, I'm looking at my nephew, I'm looking at my uncle, I'm looking at my cousin, and what if something happens to them tomorrow? So that's what kind of, it hits me. And, you know, I want people to take this in. I want people to sit. I want people to ask questions. And I'm just like Erik. I hide a lot at exhibitions and no one knows I'm the artist. People think I'm a guy unless they go on my Instagram. They've thought I was a male for the longest until they see who I am. And sometimes I will approach them and say something. And I listen a lot because I want to know what people are feeling. And I want to know that because someone once said to me, Danielle, why are you stopping? Why are you choosing to create this work instead of painting? It's never going to show. It's never going to sell. No one wants to talk about this. No one wants to see this. And when they said that to me, I just said, you know what? No, I can't keep playing it safe. I have to do this.
Right.
You know,
I think they told Betty Sars to like play it safe.
Betty
you know,
oh my God.
Right. It's like and if she had played it safe, what would we be seeing now? You know, and so we just have to have that courage not to play it safe. Yep. So Erik, and I know actually, Danielle, you mentioned earlier, now I know that you both are Nina Simone fans, which I am a Nina Simone fan. And she said an artist's duty is to reflect the times. And when she wrote the song Mississippi Damned and performed it in front of an all-white audience at Carnegie Hall, this song was in response to the racist murder of the civil rights activist Medgar Evers in Jackson, Mississippi in 1963. It's kind of wild that it's like we're back. And the subsequent bombing by the Ku Klux Klan happened when the Baptist Church in Birmingham, which killed 4 young African-American women who had really just finished a Bible class. As an artist, do you feel obligated to do work that reflects the times? And this may Erik, I want you to comment on, Danielle may also comment on it, but Erik, I'm sorry.
Okay, absolutely. So personally, I've been a student of Black history and culture since I was a child. My father gave me flashcards with Black heroes and heroines on it when I was maybe 2nd grade. And from there, on one side, it was images of Frederick Douglass, Paul Laurence Dunbar, so on and so forth. And on the flip side, it was their biography. And I was making the connection between the visual and the history with these simple cards. From there, just studying history and culture and just growing up, a child of the Black arts movement, transitioning to the hip hop culture when it was first starting in the 70s. And that was all about breaking the rules and starting new art forms that has never been seen prior. So, and all of that gave me a voice. And from there, just being more cognizant of what was going on around me had me starting to reflect the times that I was living in. So I think the first wave of that was definitely with the whole apartheid movement. And as a former graffiti artist, I would, me and the crew that I ran with, we would often talk about social issues, and we would talk about freeing South Africa and not going to support Sun City and things of that nature. We were teenagers, but we were very knowledgeable of what was happening. Even when I was younger, like I stopped standing for the salute, for saluting the flag, because I just know of all of the injustices that was going on as I was studying Black history, and it just wasn't lining up for me to salute a flag to the same flag that was often covering us up after we were killed. So I think the biggest reflection of the, as of recent, was the murder, the illegal lynching of George Floyd. And when that happened, I saw that probably 3 o'clock in the morning, the night of when it happened. And that was the last time I had a guttural cry, because I saw a man who was a little bit younger than me, lifestyle not too far from people who who are in my family. I definitely saw him in myself. And for him to be killed that way, in the way that he was killed, and for somebody to be so comfortable to lean on somebody for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, that was mind-blowing to me. But I think the point was when he cried out for his mother. When he cried out for his mother, then when I found out the next day that his mother died, and as a Christian, that just had a lot of layers to me, because did he see his mother right before he passed away? Was he crying out to God, saying, God, listen, Mom, talk to God, because I have no one else to cry out to. So I knew that night I had to create a piece, because a lot of people didn't know how to process what happened. And I think because of technology and media, we become callous, seeing all of these murders and all of these injustices that are happening to people of all different races and colors. But for him in particular, I knew I had to create a piece. I wanted to put myself in his shoes. So just having a young man put his knee on my neck, and I did this using a self-timer. He was only on my neck for about 10 seconds each time for the 3 exposures that we did. When I tell you that my neck was in pain for 2 weeks afterwards, like to the point that I could barely move, and he wasn't putting his whole weight on me. So I can't even imagine the pain that Brother George was going through. So I said all that to say that is very important for me as a human being to really reflect the times that we live in, because this is history. We mentioned earlier just about what was going on in the 60s. I think this is the next wave of the civil rights movement, so to speak. Right. So we haven't seen this type of dichotomy since the 1950s and 60s. And I think it was with that one image of, oh my gosh, I'm just having a brain fart. Oh God,
Floyd.
I can't believe this happened.
No,
not George Floyd. Mississippi, 1955, young boy, 12 years old from Chicago. I did a picture of him. I forgot his name. I'm so sorry, that happens. But his picture, he was lynched down in Money, Mississippi, and because he was whistling at a lady who owned a store. He did a wolf whistle, and the next day he was killed. Emmett Till. So what happened was his mother had an open casket funeral, and that picture went viral way before there was social media. And because of that picture, many people said, this is what we have to do. And that's when King started to step up. And that's when we started to see the Montgomery bus boycotts. So I think that the work that Danielle self, the same type of name, we're going to create artwork that's going to make you face the things that we're facing every day. No matter what color you are, no matter what background you are, you're going to face what we're facing every day through our art. And that's what we're doing.
I love that comment, Erik, facing the viewer, facing what we're facing every day. It's like now you've come into the lens of the Black, gay, the Afro-Cuban, the Afro-Jewish, you've come into that world, and all we did was shift the view, sometimes in the same painting, that there'll be a Black person in that painting, but they're in the background, they're over to the side. And this is what I honestly believe the shock of this situation, this murder of George Floyd on camera. And thanks for the woman who just filmed the entire event, because I think the combination of the shock of it is that we are watching this. There were people watching live this happening, and this impact of technology. I believe this is what has allowed us now to really jolt people into being woke again, and why we need your voices as artists, because artists not only tells the truth of the times, but it is also a healing element. I mean, Danielle, you talked about sometimes you're working and you start crying. You may have to step away, but it's a healing process as well. Art can really be that healing element, no matter where we are in the world, really.
I was thinking about what Erik said, and I think I experienced the same thing when George Floyd was killed. I didn't watch any of it. I just kept hearing about it. And it was when I first started putting up these images of my son in my home studio. And then I actually watched it and cried and cried and cried. And all I kept thinking of is, I saw George Floyd, but I also saw my son. And that's when it was like, whoa, what just happened here? And like Erik, I actually created a piece the day after, and I could not stop. And it was actually the piece that was shown in the virtual tour for Newark Arts when we did, for the Newark Museum, we did the virtual tour. It was the very large, my 8-foot flag. And my 8-foot flag has 400 lynched bodies inked on there and printed on there. So on the stripes, I put the lynched bodies on there. And I couldn't, like, I just couldn't do I couldn't sit still that day after. And I stayed in my studio and I was cutting bullet shells, gunshot shells to put into the stars. And then I was printing those lynched bodies on the flag. And then when the Newark Museum actually took it to show virtually, I was like, okay, I know this is now something that I have to continue to do, especially if it's being seen there by this many viewers. I'm not stopping. And then the Newark Museum came into my home, filmed me, saw the work, and then the series on my son began after. Wow. So I felt everything that Erik's saying, the same thing with Emmett Till. I have a piece that was inspired by him. You know, it's 2 children hanging on a flag I burnt, and the children are made out of bullet shells completely. It's a 150-pound piece, and at the bottom of them are 10 large lynches that are hanging underneath. The piece is installed hanging in the middle of a ceiling. So I don't know if artists on that same wave, when things just hit us, we're just like, okay, we have to react to it. We need to tell this story, and people need to be, I mean, it's not that we're forcing people to see it, but you need to receive it. And when you receive it, maybe it'll make you think that, whoa, what I've been saying for all these years and the way I speak to people, I need to be more conscious of that, and how people, how I interact with people of color.
Yes. I think this is such a great conversation and around identity, and I was hoping to get in before we wrap up what identity means to you, because to both of you, because this has been part of it's that conversation starter in the art world, and the whether you're in the galleries or in the museums. And so could you speak to why is that? Why is identity now the lead conversation?
I believe that we're in a time of exploration, inner exploration. People all around the world are rethinking who they are. The misconceptions of what they thought they were and who they presented themselves to be are now being questioned, internally and externally. So I think identity is very important right now. For me, I'm a Christian, I'm a man, artist, right? And it's in that order. And for me, I can have a conversation with people that I may not agree with, but we could disagree in a polite way. But when it comes to the artwork, it's very important for me to just really focus on the identity that I identify with, because I'm going to speak what I believe in, and there's people who needs to hear what I have to say. And I believe, going back to what Danielle said a while ago, is that as artists, there's the artist that will create work as a commodity, only for people to just absorb and buy. But then there's artists who are speaking from their soul. And I personally may not sell a lot of my pieces. A lot of my pieces may never be in people's homes because it's that stark, and that's okay with it. I am really speaking about my identity as an artist, as a Black man, as a Christian, to let you know where I stand from. And if you believe in me, if you agree with me, wonderfully. If you don't, we can still have conversations and move forward. So I think that's another job as an artist.
And Danielle?
I think I feel the same way. I feel the same way, Erik. So all my life, I've valued where I've come from. And what I mean by that is my grandpa is Afro-Cuban. My grandmother is Polish-Jewish. And my grandmother is an Orthodox Jew who was kicked out of her family in Brooklyn because she fell in love with my grandpa when she was 15 years old. So I have always valued that love and that commitment that my grandmother put into, you know what? Yes, he's a man of color. He's not Jewish. He's not Orthodox Jew, but I don't care. I love this man. And from that, she had 6 children, one being my mother. And we were raised Catholic and we were raised Jewish. We were raised to see everyone, to accept everyone, and I grew up in Jersey City. Jersey City, I mean, there's so many different people, dialects, languages. So I've always said to myself, this is who I am and I'm never going to change that. And I'm always going to introduce myself as this Afro-Cuban child, you know, who was raised this. Like, I mean, my dad's Filipino, so it's, you know, that goes in there too, but it's like this thing with my mom. And when your Jewish heritage, it's your grandmother or your mother or the female of the family. And I carry this with me because my grandmother struggled. She was kicked out of her family and abandoned and couldn't even see her mom, her dad, funerals, nothing. But she did that and she sacrificed for us. So I always look up to women. I have this thing with women. Sorry, Adam and Erik, but it's like, you know, when like, you know, Ms. Brower came into my life and Bisa Washington came into my life, I was like, whoa. And then Alita Caldwell, I love my Ben Jones and my Willie Cole, but you know, these women are just like, wow. So I identify as this, you know, I'm an Afro-Cuban, Polish Jew, lesbian, I'm 4'11", I'm a vegan, I'm an artist, I'm a mother of 3, and I am a teacher, you know what I mean? So a teacher of 1,000, of many. I've been teaching for 20 years. So I identify in that way. And in my work, you can now see it. Like people pick up on that I'm Cuban. People pick up on that I'm Jewish, because those influences are in my work. My paintings, you could tell that I was a Latino artist. Everyone has always said it because of the vibrance of the colors and what I use. But now you can see it in my work. And I love it when people ask me, why are you using only red, yellow, red, white, and gold? You're using that black, that red, and that gold. I'm using that because of Santeria. I'm using it because of culture. I'm using it because of history. That's why it's in there, you know? So
I love this.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think Adam has a chat question or comment.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions here, just two, and I wanted just to make space for them. This conversation is amazing. I really didn't want to interrupt. So this first question comes from Lori Villalobos. Lori, I'm sorry if I got your last name wrong. Lori says, I'm an art educator, artist as well, and working on my master's in psychology of gender and sexuality. I'm studying the intersection of art and many of these topics you're discussing. I'm also a lesbian and looking at how aesthetics and exposure to art can change and alter perceptions, biases, and beliefs, and thinking about what I can do with my young K-6 students to be exposed to art that tells the truth of the times. Have you seen in those who are what have you seen in those who are exposed to your works? Have viewers ever reached out or shown a change in behaviors, feelings after? Have you ever in following up with people exposed to your work, seen their feelings about it?
I'm going to say yes. People now who come into my residency space, because my residency is a small studio, they get to actually take the work in. It's not like it's in a gallery or it's in like a museum. So they can come in and they can actually sit with the work. And I've seen people cry looking at my work. The series They Don't Know Who We Be is 10 pieces, and it's 3 of my oldest son, 4 of my youngest son, and then my nephew. So they're in a gallery space in Jersey City, and people come in and they just sit with the work. And then they turn around and they say, thank you. And I think when I always have to ask them, like, what were you thinking? They were like, it's just, I need to feel that. And I get artists, I get mothers, I get all types of people, and they just say, I needed to feel that. I needed to see it and just sit with your work. And then they asked me they said, you know what, you don't even have to explain. Like, I see what's happening. I can see the story. I know what this is about. You know, I see Erik's piece up and mine, and the piece, Is This All We're Made Of piece is one of my first pieces that I created. And this piece has brought a lot of conversation to people when they see it and they ask, what is going on? And I said, this is from my son. And I've shared that story where my son just feels like a walking target everywhere he goes. And, you know, people have said to me, you know, can you share that? And I'm more than willing to share it. People have DM'd me, people have messaged me, and they've just said, just thank you, Danielle. Thank you for being that artist that is not afraid to share that. And I'm a teacher like Erik, and I share that with my students. I invite my art students into my studio because I want them to create this way. I don't want them to play it safe. I want them to experience art the way it's supposed to be experienced, the way it's supposed to be felt. And I want them to go on to the world and create in the same way, if possible. They might be afraid. It might take them time. It took me time to develop that. But as an art teacher right now, and as an artist right now, I just want to push people to, you know, create this way and have those thought-provoking conversations that Erik and I kind of sit back and listen to while people are doing it. So that's, I mean, to answer her question is, yes, people thank me, I mean, all the time. This woman collected one of my pieces and she just said to me, wow, she was like, your mannequin head just made me think of myself. And it's a piece that has keys on it. She said, it's like, she said, I hold the key to my future. And I had to see that. I saw this in your piece. And I just needed to have it around me when I walk into my office to remind me that this is who I am. I'm a powerful woman. So people do say it.
I'm really sorry we're running out of time. And Adam, I know you probably have some more questions, but
it's okay. I think the other question was actually asked and answered about letting go of work and sort of I think Erik answered it before, so it's okay.
I want to thank you all. I want to thank you, Linda, for moderating the discussion. Danielle and Erik, I knew this would be a rich conversation. I know we could go on for another half hour. I have my own questions. Your work is touching, moving. Thank you so much for being part of this, and something we need to do more at ArtPride. And I'm glad we're digging in.
And I just want to say, Danielle and Erik, I've learned so much just being in conversation with you. You are bright stars that I am just so glad that you are here and doing your work in this fearless way.
And we can look forward to seeing some of their work at the Newark Museum of Art at
yes,
the
you
Arts
can.
Annual coming up in June. And the other thing is just a reminder to everyone that jerseyarts.com and artprideandj.org, their Culture Vultures has some really great stuff going on. There's a podcast on the text message play Rift. And please make sure you take advantage of all of what we have to offer. And thanks everyone for being part of this today. We've had viewers from as far as Texas today, so it's kind of fun. And have a really great weekend. And thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all very much. Stay well.
Stay well. Adios.